The boarding gate is already tense. Passengers are lined up, tired, watching the slow movement toward the aircraft door. A delay has made everyone impatient. The air feels tight, restless. At the front, a flight attendant blocks the entrance with a firm hand gesture. A quiet woman steps forward, calm, composed, holding her passport and boarding pass. No urgency in her voice, only certainty. "I need to board. This is my seat." The pilot appears behind the crew, glancing at the documents without interest. One look is enough for him. He shakes his head. "There's an issue. Step aside." She does not move immediately. She simply looks at him as if waiting for something more professional, more careful. Instead, the situation sharpens. The pilot reaches out and pushes her hand away from the scanner area, firm, dismissive, public. A small motion, but everyone sees it. A few passengers shift uncomfortably. No one speaks. The woman lowers her hand slowly, not shocked, not emotional, just still. Like she is noting something that cannot be undone. And in that silence, the entire gate feels it. The mistake has already been made. They chose the wrong person. They just didn't know it yet. The airport gate is already strained before anything even happens. A long-haul international flight sits delayed by nearly an hour, and the announcement system repeats the same message in a calm voice that no longer convinces anyone. Passengers are no longer listening fully. They are watching, waiting, shifting in their seats. Some stand near the glass wall, staring at the aircraft outside as if it might explain itself. Inside the boarding area, the air is heavy with quiet frustration. Not loud anger, just exhaustion building in small gestures. A man checks his watch every 10 seconds. A child kicks the leg of a chair without being told to stop. A woman sighs repeatedly, staring at the gate screen even though nothing changes. At the center of it all is the boarding line. It has not moved properly yet. The airline staff stand behind the counter in practiced positions. Their movements are efficient but not warm. Every interaction feels slightly rushed, slightly detached, like they are trying to push time forward faster than it will allow. Then she appears in the line. A woman mid-30s to early 40s, simple clothing, no visible luxury, nothing that demands attention. She carries a small handbag and a passport held loosely in her hand, not nervous, not eager, just prepared. She does not check her phone like others. She does not look around for validation that she is in the right place. She already knows she is. When the line inches forward, she moves with it smoothly, without hesitation. At the boarding scanner, the first small disruption begins. The gate agent takes her passport, scans her boarding pass, then pauses. A fraction of a second longer than necessary, not enough for most people to notice, but enough for pattern recognition. The agent scans again. Then types something into the system. The screen changes, but not clearly, a slight hesitation in the interface. The agent's expression tightens just a little. "Please wait one moment," the agent says. It is polite, controlled, but it is not neutral. The woman steps slightly aside, still calm. She does not ask why. She does not challenge the pause. She simply waits, holding her documents at waist level. Behind her, the line begins to feel her delay. A man exhales loudly. Someone shifts their suitcase forward as if space itself will speed things up. No one speaks to her directly, but the energy changes around her position. The gate agent calls another staff member. A second glance at the documents, then a third. Each review takes longer than the last, though nothing about the papers has changed. The woman's posture remains steady, upright, patient. Her eyes move slowly across the boarding area, not anxious but observant. She notices details others ignore. The timing of staff responses, the way authority is passed between employees without explanation, the subtle avoidance of eye contact. A flight attendant now approaches, professional smile, controlled voice. "Ma'am, could you please step a little to the side while we verify something?" No explanation beyond that. She complies immediately, not because she is told twice, but because she already understands the pattern forming. She steps away from the main boarding lane and stands near a support pillar just outside the direct flow of passengers. It is not an official waiting area. It is a quiet repositioning, soft exclusion without saying the word exclusion. From there, she watches the boarding line continue without her. One by one, passengers are processed. Her delay is becoming visible now, not explained but noticed. A couple standing nearby glance at her briefly, then away. A man whispers something to his companion. The tone is not loud enough to hear clearly, but the assumption is easy to read in body language. Something is wrong with her case. The gate agent speaks into a headset. The conversation is short, controlled. Then the pilot arrives. That changes the atmosphere immediately, not because he is loud, but because his presence shifts authority structure. People straighten slightly. Staff become more precise in movement. The decision layer has changed. He looks at the woman's documents without asking for permission. A quick scan, not careful, not detailed, just fast enough to form an opinion. He says something to the staff member. The words are not fully audible, but the tone is final. The gate agent nods. The woman watches this exchange without interrupting. When the pilot finally looks at her directly, it is brief. "You'll need to wait," he says, no explanation attached, just instruction. She nods once, not in agreement, not in disagreement. In acknowledgement, the boarding line continues. Passengers move forward. She does not. Time passes in uneven fragments. 2 minutes feel like 10. Staff avoid engaging with her unless necessary. When they do, their tone is polite but reduced, as if speaking less might prevent escalation. The woman remains still but not passive. She observes the system around her, the repetition of checks, the inconsistency of authority, the subtle shift in how people stop seeing her as a normal passenger and start seeing her as a problem to be managed. She lowers her gaze briefly to her boarding pass, then back up. No frustration appears on her face, only calculation. Behind her, the aircraft door remains open. The final group of passengers is being called forward. She is still standing slightly apart from the flow, outside the movement of boarding, but fully inside the situation now. And in the quiet structure of that gate, where everyone is trying to resolve delay and pressure as quickly as possible, something about her stillness begins to feel out of place. Not because she is reacting, but because she is not. And the system has not yet understood what that means. The boarding gate is moving again, but not for everyone. Passengers continue to pass through the scanner in small, steady groups. The delay has made people more compliant now, less questioning, more focused on simply getting on the plane before anything else changes. The woman is still standing slightly aside. Not in the line anymore, not fully out of it either. A space has formed around her without anyone formally asking her to move there. A gate agent returns, this time with a different tone, more structured, less flexible. "Ma'am," the agent says, "we need you to wait for a moment longer. There's a seat verification issue." The word issue is chosen carefully. It avoids blame. It avoids clarity. She responds calmly. "There is no issue with my booking. It was confirmed yesterday." Her voice is steady, not defensive, just factual. The agent does not immediately respond to that. Instead, they look back at the system screen again, as if the answer might change if looked at long enough. Behind the counter, another staff member leans in. A short exchange happens, too quiet for passengers to hear, but visible in tension. Then the message shifts. "Your seat assignment is under review," the agent says. "Please step aside while we resolve it." This is the first full break in flow. Passengers behind her are now watching openly, not out of concern, out of curiosity. Delays always produce suspicion. Someone is always the cause of it. She steps aside again without resistance. The movement is controlled, deliberate. She does not ask repeated questions. She does not raise her voice. She does not try to reclaim urgency. She simply relocates herself further from the boarding lane, near a glass partition where arriving passengers can still be seen in reflection. The system continues without her. But now, something subtle changes. She is no longer just delayed. She is being separated. A flight attendant approaches again, this time with tighter posture. "We just need you to stay here until verification is complete." The tone implies closure, but nothing is actually closed. She replies softly, How long will that take? The attendant hesitates. That depends on the system. It is not an answer, it is a buffer. A man in the boarding line looks back at her, then looks away quickly when she notices. The perception is forming now she is the problem being handled, not the airline, not the process, her. A second-level supervisor arrives. The presence changes the tone again. Decisions are no longer being discussed, they are being enforced. The supervisor glances at her documents briefly, then at the screen, then at the agent. Is there a mismatch? The supervisor asks. No mismatch, the agent replies, but the system flagged a discrepancy. The word flagged is important. It introduces doubt without proof. The supervisor nods as if that is enough reason. Then we hold boarding for her until it clears. The sentence lands quietly but firmly. It is not framed as punishment. It is framed as procedure. She looks at them both now, not angry, not confused, just present. I have a confirmed ticket, she says again, slower this time. I was already assigned this seat. The supervisor does not engage with the content of that sentence, only with control. We are following protocol. Protocol has replaced explanation. Behind them, passengers continue boarding. The sound of footsteps on the jet bridge becomes more distant with every passing minute. Her absence is now visible in the system of movement. A couple of passengers begin whispering openly. Maybe she missed check-in, or something wrong with her documents. No one knows, but assumptions fill the gap faster than facts. She hears it, but she does not turn around. Instead, she shifts her focus to the staff again, watching how quickly authority is layering itself over her situation. Gate agent right arrow, supervisor right arrow, implied pilot involvement. A chain forming without transparency. Then the pilot reappears. This time he does not ask for documents. He already assumes familiarity with the case. A quick glance at the screen, a quick glance at her, no detailed inspection, just conclusion. You'll need to stay here until we resolve the discrepancy, he says. His tone is final but still controlled, as if the matter is already decided internally and only being communicated externally now. She takes a small breath, not emotional, measured. I understand, she says. But she does not move further away this time. She remains where she is within sight of the boarding lane, close enough to see passengers entering the aircraft, far enough to be excluded from it. A quiet separation has fully formed now, not physical restraint, procedural denial. The pilot turns away, already disengaging from her presence. The gate agent resumes scanning the next passengers as if nothing unusual is happening. But the woman remains standing there, still, observing, not arguing, not escalating. And as the final passengers for this group disappear down the jet bridge, the reality of the situation settles quietly into place. She is not being delayed anymore. She is being removed from motion itself. And no one in authority has yet realized what that kind of decision costs when it is made about the wrong person. The gate is quieter now, but not calmer. Most passengers have already boarded. The remaining few are watching the last stage of the process with growing impatience, but also curiosity. Delays always create two groups, those who leave quickly and those who stay behind to understand why things went wrong. The woman is still near the boarding area, not in line, not moving toward the aircraft, just positioned within sight of the entire process as if she has been paused inside a system that is still running without her. A new gate agent takes over the scanner for the remaining passengers. The shift in staff does not reset her situation, it reinforces it. The record has already been written. The pilot stands closer now, more involved, more visible. He looks at her documents again, but not with care, with assumption. Then he speaks, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear clearly. There's a discrepancy with this passenger's boarding status. The word discrepancy spreads immediately. It is vague enough to mean anything, and that is what makes it dangerous. A few passengers glance toward her more openly now. The gate agent places her passport and boarding pass on the counter instead of handing them back. A small detail, but it matters. It changes how ownership of her identity is treated in the space. She notices. She does not react. Instead, she watches the process unfold as if observing it from outside herself. A flight attendant steps closer, lowering their voice but not removing the impact of what is being said. "Ma'am, you may have been placed in the wrong boarding sequence. We are checking." Wrong boarding sequence is not an accusation, but it functions like one in public. Behind her, someone sighs loudly. A passenger mutters something under their breath, too quiet to be fully heard but clearly impatient. She becomes the reason for delay in the eyes of the crowd, even though she is not controlling any part of it. The pilot now takes a more direct role. He gestures toward the scanner. "Let's verify this properly." Her documents are picked up, this time not carefully placed back down. They are passed between two staff members quickly, like items under review rather than personal identification. She notices the shift in handling. It is subtle but visible. Her control over how she is treated is gone in this space. A junior staff member scans her boarding pass again. The machine beeps normally. Nothing changes. The staff member frowns slightly, confused. But instead of resolving that confusion, it is absorbed into authority. "Hold the process," the pilot says, and the boarding line behind her slows again. Passengers who had already started moving forward now pause at the jet bridge entrance. The flow of boarding breaks once more. Now she is not just delayed. She is interrupting others. The atmosphere shifts. People begin to look at her more directly, not with understanding, with judgment forming in real time. A woman in the boarding line whispers to her companion, "If something is wrong, why don't they just remove her from the system?" The word remove lands without intention, but it carries weight. The gate agent hears it, does not correct it. The silence allows interpretation to become reality. The pilot steps slightly closer to her now, lowering his voice but not softening the message. "We need you to step aside fully while we resolve this. You're holding up the boarding process." That sentence reframes everything. Not system error, not verification delay, but obstruction. She looks at him for a moment, long enough for it to feel like a response without words. Then she moves not toward escalation, not toward protest, but further away from the boarding lane. This time it is not voluntary repositioning. It is guided exclusion. A staff member subtly gestures her toward a side area near the wall, not a waiting lounge, not a seating section. Just empty space where she is no longer in the path of operations. She complies again, no resistance. But now the meaning of compliance changes in the eyes of those watching. A passenger near the gate shakes their head slightly as if confirming their own assumption. "She must have done something," someone says quietly. No one asks what. The idea is enough. The woman stands near the wall now, slightly separated from both passengers and staff flow. She can still see the aircraft door. She can still see boarding continuing without interruption for others. But she is no longer part of the sequence. A flight attendant avoids direct eye contact with her now, not out of anger, out of procedural focus. She has been moved from participant to case. The pilot returns to the counter and speaks with staff in low, efficient sentences. The conversation is about system checks, boarding lists, verification status. Her presence is no longer the subject. Her exclusion is. And in that shift, something more powerful than humiliation begins forming. Normalization. She is no longer being questioned. She is being handled. Behind her, passengers continue boarding. The aircraft door remains open. Her seat exists somewhere inside that plane, but access to it is now defined by authority interpretation rather than confirmed data. And she stands still in the side area, watching a process that continues perfectly without her. Not because she is wrong, but because, in this moment, the system has decided she does not belong inside its flow. And the most dangerous part is not that decision itself. It is how easily everyone around her begins to accept it as normal. The boarding gate has stopped feeling like a transit space. It now feels like an operational zone where something is being contained. The woman remains near the side wall, slightly separated from the boarding stream. Passengers continue to move past her one by one through the jet bridge. The aircraft door stays open, waiting for the final few entries. But she is no longer part of that movement. A new presence arrives. Security, not rushed, not aggressive, controlled steps, measured posture. Their arrival is not loud, but it changes the atmosphere instantly. Conversations lower, staff straighten, decisions become more rigid. The pilot immediately turns toward them. A brief exchange happens, quick, efficient, already shaped by assumption rather than discovery. The pilot gestures subtly toward her. The message is clear without needing explanation. The security officer approaches her position. "Ma'am, we need to confirm your travel status," the officer says, not accusation, not reassurance, just procedural control. She nods slightly. "I've already provided my documents," she replies calmly. The officer does not react to the content, only to the instruction layer above it. "Please come with us to verify in detail," he says. She does not resist. She moves, not toward escalation, not toward confrontation, toward compliance under observation. This movement changes perception again. Passengers near the gate notice security involvement and immediately adjust their interpretation. What was once confusion becomes assumption of seriousness. Something must be wrong. The woman is guided a few steps away from the boarding counter area, closer to a secondary verification desk that is rarely used during normal operations. The pilot follows at a distance, watching. Not intervening directly now, but controlling indirectly. At the counter, a supervisor pulls up her record again. The screen shows multiple tabs, multiple verification layers. A slight pause appears in the staff's behavior, not spoken, just visible hesitation. The security officer stands beside her now. "Is there any reason your boarding status is under review?" he asks. She responds evenly. "No reason I have been informed of." The officer glances at the screen, then at the pilot, then back at her. The uncertainty is not in her answers. It is in the system interpretation. The pilot steps forward. "There seems to be a mismatch between the boarding assignment and the current manifest update," he says. The words are structured carefully. They sound technical, but they function as justification. The supervisor nods slowly, as if absorbing that explanation into authority. "We'll need to hold her boarding until resolved," the supervisor says. It is no longer a suggestion. It is a decision that reinforces itself. The woman stands still as the conversation continues around her. She is not included in the decision-making loop anymore. She is the subject of it. A junior staff member tries scanning her boarding pass again. The system responds normally. No error, no rejection, just normal confirmation. The staff member hesitates. That hesitation is important, but it is not acted upon. Instead, it is overridden by hierarchy. "Proceed with holding," the pilot says again. His voice is firm now, less explanatory, more final. The boarding process continues for others. The final group moves toward the aircraft, but the woman is no longer within that flow. She is positioned beside it, watching movement she was originally part of but can no longer access. A passenger walking past glances at her and then at security. The unspoken conclusion forms quickly in their mind. Problem case. Security involvement confirms it. The woman notices this shift in perception, but she does not correct it. She does not speak to the crowd. She does not attempt to reclaim narrative. Instead, she turns slightly toward the counter again, observing the staff behavior more than the passengers now. There is something changing in the way they interact with each other. Not confidence. Coordination under uncertainty. A second supervisor arrives. Now the chain of authority is layered. Pilot right arrow, supervisor right arrow, security right arrow, gate staff, each one reinforcing the same temporary conclusion without full confirmation. The woman remains calm in the center of it, not arguing, not escalating, just present. A sealed quietness that contrasts sharply with the growing procedural noise around her. Then something small happens. A junior staff member quietly flags an inconsistency in the back-end system again. A timestamp mismatch between assignment confirmation and override entry. It is subtle, almost dismissed immediately, but not entirely ignored this time. The supervisor looks at it longer. The pilot notices the hesitation. The security officer shifts slightly. For the first time, the system is not fully aligned, but instead of stopping, the process continues forward, because reversing authority in real time is harder than continuing a wrong decision. The woman watches this carefully, not reacting. Recording behavior more than words, the aircraft boarding announcement sounds again. Final call. Passengers begin to disappear into the jet bridge. The door remains open, but now it feels farther away than before, not physically, procedurally. And in that gap between correctness and authority, something begins to form quietly, a contradiction the system has not yet resolved, but is already too committed to reverse easily. And she is still standing exactly where they placed her. The final boarding call echoes through the gate again. This time, it feels less like an announcement and more like a closing door. Passengers who remain hurry forward. The jet bridge light reflects off their movement in steady rhythm, step, pause, step again, until they disappear into the aircraft one by one. The woman is still near the secondary verification desk, not restrained, not detained, but no longer included in any active flow of movement toward the plane. Her position has become fixed, almost administrative, like a case file waiting on a decision that is not being rushed, but also not being resolved. Security remains beside her, not aggressive, but present enough to define boundaries. The pilot stands a few steps away, occasionally checking the boarding status on the system screen, then glancing back toward her as if waiting for something to change. Nothing changes. The system still shows her booking as valid. But her boarding status is still marked under review. That contradiction is now the center of everything. A gate supervisor quietly updates the boarding log for remaining passengers. Each name processed smoothly now. No interruptions, no delays, except hers. She is no longer part of the list being actively handled. She is in a separate state, outside flow, inside review. A passenger walks past, dragging a small carry-on bag. They glance at her briefly, then at security, then look away quickly. The expression is not curiosity anymore. It is avoidance. Assumption has solidified, something must have happened, something she caused. The woman notices the shift but does not react outwardly. Instead, she watches how quickly human perception adjusts when authority remains silent. A flight attendant passes near her position. For a moment, it looks like they might speak to her again, but they don't. They adjust their path slightly, avoiding direct interaction. She is still physically visible, but socially separated. The boarding gate now functions without her presence being acknowledged. Inside the aircraft, boarding continues smoothly. The final passengers are settling into seats. Overhead bins are closing. The cabin is transitioning from movement to preparation. From outside, the aircraft looks almost complete, except for her absence inside it. A supervisor approaches the pilot quietly. "There's no system error showing," the supervisor says under their breath. The pilot replies without looking up from the screen. "Then why is the override still active?" It is not a question directed at her. It is a question directed at the system. But no one answers it fully, because answering it would require stopping everything. And everything is already in motion. Security shifts slightly closer to her, not to escalate, but to maintain procedural distance. She remains calm, hands still, posture unchanged. Her stillness contrasts with the growing discomfort in staff behavior. A junior staff member scrolls through logs again, this time slower, more careful. Something is not aligning between boarding assignment and override authorization. But the chain of authority above them does not change, so the process continues. The woman finally speaks again, not loudly, not emotionally, just clearly. "My seat is confirmed. I was checked in. Everything matches your system." A pause follows, not because she is wrong, but because no one wants to be the first to challenge what has already been escalated. The pilot finally responds. "We are still resolving it." Still resolving, a phrase that has now replaced explanation entirely. Passengers inside the aircraft are no longer visible from the gate. The door remains open, but the boarding bridge is emptying. The transition from boarding to departure preparation is beginning. Time is compressing. And she is still outside that transition. A staff member quietly removes the boarding scanner from active use, not officially, just repositioned slightly away from immediate interaction. Another small signal, reduced engagement. She is not being addressed anymore. She is being contained in waiting. The woman shifts her gaze briefly toward the aircraft door, then back to the staff, not impatient, not anxious. Just observing how long a system can maintain a contradiction before it is forced to correct itself. Behind her, the gate is now nearly empty of passengers. Only staff remain. And even among staff, fewer people are speaking directly. Information is passing through layers instead of voices. Pilot right arrow, supervisor right arrow, system right arrow, security. No one is taking full ownership of the decision anymore. That absence of ownership creates a strange stability. Nothing changes because no one wants to be responsible for changing it. The woman remains still in that silence, neither resisting nor complying beyond what has already been done, just existing inside a decision loop that has not yet resolved whether she belongs on the plane or outside it. And as the final passengers settle inside the aircraft, the gate becomes quieter than before, not because the situation is resolved, but because it has been paused at the worst possible moment, where everyone knows something is wrong, but no one is ready to be the one who fixes it. The gate is almost empty now. Only a few staff members remain near the boarding counter, and the aircraft door is still open, but no longer active with movement. Inside, passengers are seated. Overhead bins are closed. The cabin is transitioning from boarding to pre-departure silence. Outside, the woman remains in the same position near the secondary verification desk. Still, not moved, not resolved. The atmosphere has changed again, but subtly. It is no longer public attention that defines her situation. It is internal uncertainty. A junior staff member is now staring at the system screen longer than before. Something is not matching. The boarding pass is valid. The seat assignment exists. The check-in record is clean, but the override log shows a manual restriction applied after validation. That sequence does not normally happen. It is backwards. The staff member hesitates, then quietly leans toward the supervisor. "There's no error in her booking," they say. The supervisor does not respond immediately. Instead, they glance toward the pilot. The pilot answers before the question is fully formed. "System lag," he says, 2 words, simple, final. Not technically proven, just socially accepted. The staff member nods but not fully convinced, because they have seen enough systems to know lag does not create selective exclusion like this. The woman hears the exchange. She does not interrupt it. Instead, she watches how quickly uncertainty is being flattened into explanation. Security shifts weight slightly beside her, not aggressive, but aware now that something is not fully settled. A second review begins quietly at the counter, not official. Just internal cross-checking. The supervisor opens a deeper log layer. Timestamp entries appear. Boarding confirmed, normal seat assigned, normal check invalidated, normal override applied. Later timestamp, there is a pause, longer this time. The supervisor's expression tightens slightly, not dramatic, just recognition of inconsistency. The pilot notices the pause. "What is it?" he asks. The supervisor hesitates before answering. "The override was applied after confirmation." That sentence changes the room, not loudly, but structurally, because it suggests intervention after completion. The pilot steps closer to the screen. "That's not possible without escalation approval," he says. The supervisor nods slowly. "Yes." A silence follows, not dramatic, just heavy. The woman remains still, watching all of it unfold without stepping forward. She is not involved in the system discussion, but she is the reason it exists. A flight attendant approaches quietly from the aircraft door, speaking in a low voice. "Cabin is ready. We are waiting on final clearance." The pilot does not respond immediately. For the first time, his attention is divided between the aircraft and the screen, and the woman, 3 points of responsibility that no longer align cleanly. A junior staff member scrolls again, then stops. "There is no passenger complaint logged," they say quietly. Another pause. Because that removes the usual justification layer. No complaint, no behavioral flag, no disruption record, just a clean booking with an applied restriction. Security now looks toward the supervisor, not for instruction, but for clarification. The supervisor looks uncomfortable for the first time. "This needs higher confirmation," they say quietly. The pilot exhales slightly through his nose. A controlled reaction, but no longer fully confident. The woman finally shifts her gaze toward the counter again, not speaking, just observing how the decision structure is beginning to separate from itself. One layer is defending the action, another is questioning it, and a third is no longer sure why it started. Inside the aircraft, a subtle announcement is made, final preparations for departure. The cabin door remains open, but only just. Time is tightening. The supervisor takes a small step back from the screen. "This should have been caught earlier," they say quietly. No one responds, because that sentence implies shared responsibility, and shared responsibility is something no one wants to fully accept right now. The woman is still standing where she was placed, but the meaning of that position is shifting. She is no longer simply delayed. She is becoming a contradiction the system cannot quickly classify. Security adjusts slightly, now less certain about categorization. The pilot looks again at her documents on the counter. Still untouched, still valid, still unresolved, and for the first time, no one in authority speaks immediately. Because the problem is no longer whether she can board. It is whether the decision already made about her can still be justified without unraveling everything that followed. And in that silence, the system begins to feel something it was not designed for. Doubt that does not belong to one person but spreads through procedure itself. The gate is now in its final operational phase. Passengers inside the aircraft are fully seated. The cabin crew is preparing for departure checks. The jet bridge stands connected but inactive, like a bridge that no longer carries movement, only delay. Outside, the woman remains near the counter area, still not boarding, still not cleared. But now, the situation around her is no longer quiet in the same way. It is controlled silence under pressure. A senior operations supervisor has arrived off record. Not announced to passengers, not visible to the aircraft cabin, only present within the gate staff hierarchy. This changes everything again, because now the decision is no longer just local. It is being watched internally. The supervisor looks at the system logs on a tablet. Longer than anyone else has looked so far. No interruption, no quick assumption, just reading. The pilot stands slightly to the side now, arms crossed, watching but no longer fully directing. Security remains near the woman, but their posture has shifted. Less enforcement, more observation. The supervisor speaks quietly. "There is no passenger irregularity recorded." The sentence is simple, but it removes the foundation of the entire situation. A flight attendant standing near the aircraft door receives a message on their device. They glance up, then toward the gate, then back down. The cabin is ready to close, but something is still unresolved outside. A passenger inside the aircraft looks out through the small window near the gate bridge. They see staff clustered around a single point near the counter. They cannot hear anything, but they can sense delay that is no longer procedural. It is administrative uncertainty. Back at the counter, a staff member scrolls through system logs again, now more carefully, slower. A second anomaly appears. Override authorization tag does not match the assigned approval level. That is not supposed to happen in normal workflow. The staff member hesitates before speaking. "This override doesn't have proper escalation coding." The supervisor looks at it again, then confirms. "No escalation record exists for this action." Silence follows. because that means the restriction on her boarding was applied without formal authorization trail. The pilot straightens slightly. "That must be a system error," he says again, but this time less firmly. Security shifts weight, looking between both sides of the counter. The woman remains still, not reacting to the technical discussion, not interrupting, just watching how language is slowly changing from certainty to correction. A gate agent speaks quietly. "If we clear her now, we will need to reopen boarding process validation." That sentence is not about her. It is about consequences, operational consequences. Time consequences, accountability consequences, and that is what makes the room hesitate, because clearing her is no longer just letting her board, it is admitting the system may have incorrectly blocked her in the first place. The supervisor rubs their fingers together briefly, a small sign of discomfort. "We need confirmation from operations control," they say. The pilot nods quickly. "Yes, get confirmation." But the delay in action is already visible. Passengers inside the aircraft are now fully waiting. The cabin crew is aware that something is holding departure, but not what. Inside the gate, the system is under pressure from both sides. Departure timing and internal inconsistency. A junior staff member quietly speaks up again. "She was cleared at check-in without flags." No one responds immediately, because that statement removes even more justification layers. Security looks at the supervisor. The supervisor looks at the pilot. The pilot looks at the screen again, and for the first time, no one has an immediate correction. The woman finally shifts her gaze slightly toward the aircraft door, still calm, still composed. But now there is something different in how the system is behaving around her. It is no longer confident. It is managing contradiction under time pressure. A final boarding reminder is announced inside the aircraft. Cabin crew is preparing to close doors, but the jet bridge is still connected, waiting. The supervisor speaks quietly again. "If we cannot validate override authorization, we cannot justify exclusion." That sentence lands heavier than anything before it, because it is not emotional, it is procedural truth. The pilot does not respond immediately this time. He looks at the woman briefly, then back at the system. For the first time, authority is not unified. It is split between what was done and what can be proven, and she is standing exactly in the middle of that fracture. Still silent, still not escalating. But now, the system itself is beginning to feel the weight of the decision it made without full confirmation. And that weight is starting to slow everything down. The gate is no longer functioning like a normal departure area. It feels paused between two states, one foot inside execution, one foot trapped in correction. Inside the aircraft, passengers are seated. Cabin crew is waiting for final clearance. The door is still open, but the tone has changed. Departure is no longer a matter of readiness, but permission. Outside, the woman remains in the same position near the counter. But now, the staff around her are no longer operating with certainty. They are operating with review. The senior operations supervisor is still holding the system logs open. This time, there is no rushing through screens. Every line is being read carefully, as if the meaning might change depending on how long it is observed. The pilot stands slightly behind them now, not directing, not confirming, just present. Security has stepped back half a pace, not dismissal, adjustment, because something in the structure of authority has shifted. The supervisor finally speaks. "This override was applied without proper escalation trail." The words are not emotional, they are procedural, and that makes them harder to ignore. A silence follows, not dramatic, but absolute in its effect. The gate agent looks uncomfortable now, glancing between the screen and the supervisor. "We followed the pilot's instruction," the agent says quietly. That sentence changes the direction of responsibility, because now it is not a system issue alone. It is decision tracing. The pilot responds immediately, but not sharply. "I did not authorize a manual override without confirmation," he says. There is a pause after that, not because it is disputed, but because it is being checked internally in real time against logs. The supervisor scrolls again, then stops. The timestamp shows a manual restriction applied from a secondary terminal, not the main control interface. That detail matters a lot because it indicates the action did not originate from the standard authority channel. The pilot leans closer. That terminal is not assigned to this gate. Another pause, longer this time. The system is now exposing inconsistency rather than hiding it. A junior staff member speaks carefully. If the override is invalid, then the boarding restriction is not enforceable. No one immediately responds, because that sentence is simple, but it dismantles the structure that has held the situation together since the beginning. The woman remains still. She has not moved closer. She has not demanded attention. She has not corrected anyone, but now she is no longer being actively dismissed either. She is being re-evaluated. Security adjusts posture again, not toward control, toward uncertainty. The supervisor finally looks directly at the woman for the first time in a long stretch, not as a problem, not as a case, but as a passenger whose status is now unclear in a different direction. "We need to verify one final authorization source," the supervisor says. The pilot nods slowly. "Yes, do it properly." The tone is different now, less defensive, more procedural caution. Inside the aircraft, the cabin crew receives a message. They look toward the door again. No one is moving it toward closure now. Everything is waiting. The woman finally shifts her gaze toward the counter, not reacting to the conversation, but observing the change in structure. Earlier, she was excluded by assumption. Now she is excluded by uncertainty, and that difference matters, because uncertainty does not hold authority well. A new log request is initiated. Higher-level system access is being queried. Not local, central. The supervisor waits for response. The pilot waits. Security waits. Even the gate staff stops speaking. And in that silence, something subtle changes in the environment. The decision is no longer being defended. It is being verified. The woman remains calm, hands still, posture unchanged. But now the room is not fully aligned against her anymore. It is divided between what was done and what can still be justified. The system response finally begins to load on the supervisor's screen. Slowly, line by line, and as it appears, the energy at the gate shifts again, not toward resolution yet, but toward the beginning of correction that no one can fully avoid anymore. The screen refreshes slowly, not because the system is failing, but because it is pulling records from a higher authorization layer that is not meant to be accessed casually during active boarding. Everyone at the counter is now watching the same thing. No one speaks. The supervisor stands closest, tablet angled slightly down as lines of audit data begin to appear. The pilot is beside them, no longer in control of the flow, only observing it. Security remains near the woman, but their presence has softened into neutrality. The earlier certainty is gone. Inside the aircraft, cabin crew waits. The door remains open, but no announcement is made. The system outside has taken priority over departure. A line appears on the supervisor's screen. Override source, external authorization flag, unmatched terminal origin. A second line follows. No valid escalation record found for restriction event. The supervisor exhales quietly through the nose. Not dramatic, just confirmation of inconsistency. This wasn't processed through proper channels, they say. The words are not directed at anyone specific, but everyone understands what they imply. The pilot leans in slightly. "Show me the originating terminal." The supervisor scrolls. A terminal ID appears. It is not assigned to gate operations, not assigned to flight crew, not assigned to security. A junior staff member steps forward slightly. "That terminal is not active in this gate's operational list." Silence. Then the supervisor confirms it. "It belongs to administrative audit access." That sentence changes the entire structure of the situation, because audit access is not meant to intervene in live boarding decisions. It is meant to observe, not restrict. Security looks at the screen now. For the first time, they are not evaluating the passenger. They are evaluating the process. The pilot straightens slightly, voice lower. So the restriction was applied from a non-operational channel. The supervisor nods once. Yes. A pause follows. The implication is clear even without being stated directly. The exclusion was not procedurally valid. Inside the aircraft, a crew member receives a message. They look toward the open door again. Still no clearance. Still waiting, but now the delay is no longer about her. It is about the system itself. The woman remains in the same position, still calm, still silent, but now she is no longer the center of suspicion. She is the center of correction. The supervisor takes a small step back from the screen. We will need to reverse the boarding restriction, they say. No one objects immediately, because there is nothing to object to in procedural correction once invalidity is confirmed. The pilot nods slowly. Yes. Restore her boarding status. Security shifts slightly, now fully neutral. The gate agent begins typing, not fast, carefully, as if acknowledging the weight of correction. A new line appears on the system. Status update, active boarding reinstated, but no one moves yet, because procedural correction does not immediately equal action in real time. It requires alignment across systems. The supervisor looks at the woman again. This time, the tone is different. Your boarding status is now active, they say. No apology, no emotional framing, just confirmation. The woman nods once, not expressive, not delayed, just acknowledgement. She does not rush toward the aircraft. She does not react to the reversal. She simply waits for the process to complete fully. Inside the aircraft, a final message is sent to cabin crew. Boarding clearance resumed. The jet bridge light shifts slightly as the system reconnects access flow. Passengers inside remain unaware of the full details, but they sense movement resuming. Outside, staff begin to step aside, not clearing a path dramatically, just naturally restoring flow. The woman walks forward now, slowly, calmly, not escorted, not announced, just re-entering the same system she was removed from. The pilot watches her approach the jet bridge entrance. There is no further instruction given. No confrontation, no correction of tone. Because correction has already happened in the system layer, she reaches the aircraft door. Brief pause, then steps inside. No one stops her. No one introduces her. She simply re-enters the structure as if the interruption never belonged there in the first place. Behind her, the gate staff return to operational normalcy. But the atmosphere is different now. Quieter in a different way, not tension. Resolution, not victory, correction, and nothing about it is spoken aloud. Because the system did not lose control through emotion, it lost it through procedure. And now it is trying to forget the moment it almost made that mistake permanent.